Excellent. Thank you so much. Really excited for everyone to be here today. Really excited to be here with our startups in the Third Derivative program. I would say Chris will join us hopefully in a bit. He's actually pitching in the other session that you spoke of, so hopefully he'll join us too with EH Group. So what we want to do today, I want to give everybody kind of a quick snapshot of what Third Derivative is. Then we will hear from each of our startups what they're up to, but really we'll dig into a conversation after that on deployment, and we'll talk a bit about why Third Derivative is especially motivated by that, and hopefully have some time for questions as well. So yeah, I'd say with that, let's get started. Third Derivative is a program that was actually started by the Rocky Mountain Institute, and if you're familiar with RMI, they are a kind of global nonprofit think tank. They work on policy, research, they work with governments and corporations. The thing a few years ago, Third Derivative is about 3 years old now. About 3 years ago, RMI recognized that a lot of the technology in some of the hardest debate sectors either didn't exist yet or was perhaps going to take too long to get to market. And so they said, what can we do to help accelerate that? And there was kind of the germ of the idea for Third Derivative, which is a climate tech accelerator. And I think the thing that, actually let me go, I do have some slides. The whole point of it is to find, fund, and scale kind of the world's greatest climate tech startups in these hardest to abate sectors. And what we have done with Third Derivative is really created an ecosystem that helps startups across all of the different valleys of death, as they say. So we have an ecosystem that includes investor partners, and we have corporate partners, and the whole point is to really not only get those organizations to talk to each other and to help inform and inspire across, to help. The investors are really excited to talk to the corporate partners to say, is this interesting to you, and vice versa. The corporate partners are excited when the investors are interested. But I think the most important thing certainly is how do we help our startups also integrate with our corporate partners to get this technology to market faster. Let me get to my next slide here. So these are just some of the basic results. So in 3 years, we have now created a portfolio of 125 startups across, again, those hardest to abate sectors. We also have a cohort specifically around carbon capture and removal. We have corporate partners, which I'll show you on the next slide, with $4 trillion market cap total. And $7 billion of our investor partners have assets under management. So we have a lot of kind of access to big organizations and hopefully a lot of investment within this ecosystem. And I think the last thing I would say is our startups over the 3 years that we've had the program running have over $780 million has been kind of invested or captured non-dilutive funding going into our startups. So we feel like we're doing a really great job getting money into these companies. The thing that I think that we're always trying to improve is how do we get more pilots on the board? How do we get more deployment? Because it's really one of the biggest parts of what our ecosystem is meant to do. And we do have some good case studies, but we're kind of dead set on how do we get a lot more of those, because certainly this is urgent. So with that, I would say let's, actually these are our corporate partners. And feel free to ask any questions about any of those after. I want to definitely get to the startups here while we're getting going. So here are our panelists today. And I guess I would say let's just start on this end with Christine and give each of you a few minutes, kind of talk about what you're up to. And certainly in the room, I think we have investors, we have CVCs, we have some startups in the room perhaps. So anything that you want to say with that audience in mind too, feel free.
Hi, so my name is Christine. I'm the Business Development and Product Strategy Lead for Compact Membrane Systems. And what we do at CMS is point source carbon capture for hard to abate industry. So when we were looking at the practical paths to decarbonization, the power industry has renewables and electrification for the transport industry, but we saw a lot of near-term commitments from the hard to abate sectors without a practical path to that decarbonization. So the breakthrough that CMS had is we call a facilitated transport membrane for carbon capture. What that means is that our membrane can take CO2 out of other gases in a low pressure, low energy situation. And that low pressure is really the crux of what we do. And the membranes allow us to be modular and containerizable, so that when we're looking at an engineering system, which all of this is, the membrane is great, and we've got team expertise at the chemistry level so that we can make sure that we have the power behind the separation that we need, but then also at the product development level to make sure that that really interesting chemistry is a module that lasts in the field. And so if there's contaminants in the stream, particulates, other components that could be poisonous to things like amines or traditional technology, our membrane can be very robust in those situations. And then all of that leads to a really simplified balance of plant. And so the system is a two-stage membrane system with minimal pumps and a lot of clever engineering behind it to give you a system that can be made and manufactured in the next 5 years and start taking a really big leap towards industrial decarbonization. So when we look at that, that means our low energy systems fit in a small footprint. So think 40-foot containers that you can put next to existing processes. And what we really think this allows us to do is keep producing today's building blocks and chemicals that we rely on without destroying the home that we have loved for the last 1,000 years.
Awesome. Thank you, Christine. Udi, we'll move on to you now.
Thank you, and thank you for having us here. So my name is Udi, and I'm the CEO of Daanaa, and we have a power transaction chip. We call it energy untethered because we untether the energy from the wire, from the inverter, from the converter, from the copper that is connected to it at the moment to allow new use cases. So that energy that we transfer can transfer both energy and data through air, water, wood, plastic, concrete, glass, any combination thereof. We can actually go through human tissue. We choose currently not to. And it allows us to essentially provide action on a cell-based, both in the solar and the battery domain, and through that capture and use all of the energy within a battery or within a solar cell, and to basically untap the efficiencies that are currently capped by the management systems that manage the situation but doesn't solve it because of the cell-to-cell connection. And also what it allows us to do, and we've demonstrated that as well, is to essentially charge vehicles, either stationary or in motion, and provide true vehicle-to-grid capabilities because we have all that lithium floating around that we need to put to good use also in the short-term solution. So these are the areas that we're putting our technology into. We have third-party validation to most of what I just said by now, and the rest of it is in the lab. So I'm happy to elaborate that and as we go forward. Please.
Thanks, Udi. Yeah, Dom.
Nice to meet you all. Dom, I'm doing product and sales at Carbonfuture. Carbonfuture is about carbon removal you can trust. As we all know, carbon removal is the missing piece or one of the pieces to actually make sure we can tackle climate change. On the other hand, we know that to get to the 10 gigaton from the couple of 100,000 ton that we have, it's almost a TikTok level kind of growth. So on the onset, what Carbonfuture was about was to say, like, how can we help actually enable that kind of volume and ensure that we do that in a qualitative way. So what we focus on is actually to help track the carbon that is captured to its final rest in peace place, be that in the build structure or in the soil. So we have a tracking solution. And given that a lot of these technologies in project needs this additional revenue stream, we have trading services where we actually help find a market for these credits. We support technologies that are durable. So we say like 100 years plus stored in the ground. So the menu kind of starts from biochar and harnessed rock weathering, can go up to DAC, and all the technologies that we're probably going to see come up as we kind of shape the market together. Was founded in Germany. We have about $1 million in revenue and are on both sides of the Atlantic. And thanks for having us today.
Excellent. Thank you, Dom. And Brooks.
Hi there. Yeah, my name is Brooks. I lead up corporate and business development for Sylvatex. We're an early stage climate tech startup out of the Bay Area. We just closed our Series A last year. And what we're focused on is cathode active material synthesis for electric vehicles and energy storage applications. And for those of you more unfamiliar with batteries, the cathode is the positive side of the battery, where all of the metals, the lithium, the nickel, and the cobalt, and all it's located. And the cathode is the most expensive and most carbon-intensive part of the battery. And so, because of that, we see that as a bottleneck to accelerated adoption. And so, innovations there can greatly help that. And so, what we're doing is we have a one-pot dry synthesis process that eliminates all water use and allows for a broader range of feedstock material inputs. And so instead of conventional metal sulfates, we're actually able to use metal oxides and hydroxides, which then allows for no sodium sulfate waste either. And so we're looking to just create the typical cathodes that are on the market for these EV and energy storage applications. And so we found that our process is chemistry agnostic. We've produced everything from NMC, LFP, LMO, NCA, and look to be flexible with market conditions as they're changing. And so that's kind of where we're at.
Excellent. Thank you all for being here today. Like I said, we're really trying to figure out, and we will welcome any questions or ideas from the audience as well. What are the best ways when you're trying to engage with a large organization to help a lot of these startups? Certainly not always software. Software is a bit easier to pilot. These hardest to abate sectors, a lot of hardware, hard tech. So would love to hear, some of the experiences you've all had and some of the suggestions you have for those in the room who may be, working with companies like you or attempting to and perhaps failing. But yeah, we kind of want to air it all out, the good, bad, the ugly, everything. So Christine, let me start with you. Can you, at least give us a sense for what it looks like to pilot with a large organization, and what are some of the ingredients that go into that make it work?
Sure. So we have 4 pilots right now, actually. So one is boilers, and then the other ones are refractory materials, steel, and a last incinerator application. And what I think is in common that works really well from all 4 of these pilots is that they came with a defined project that has an immediate need. So it wasn't the research group coming to us. It was actually a remit from a little bit higher up, and it was a group of research to validate the tech, operations to understand what we would actually need to do all the tie-ins on the ground. Those practical engineering pieces are really important to have up front, because otherwise you can waste 8 months because you designed for one tie-in and actually it's going into a different plant that has a whole different need. So those really practical stuff, having it up front, gives us all a lot of, saves everybody a lot of heartache in the end. And I think the other thing is a phased approach. So for a lot of these, a new technology can be scary, especially the one that wasn't devised in-house. So having a phased approach to say, for instance, the steel pilot that we're doing, it's actually with voestalpine here in Austria. There's a lab test first. When that is successful, then there's a larger pilot, and then they have their first demonstration site picked out. And that really allows everybody to step through the process together. We can have all the stakeholders engaged early, and it just makes the whole thing more successful as it moves forward.
That's great. Udi, do you have any thing that you can share in that regard?
That was very well said. The layer that I'm going to add to that is that Arthur C. Clarke said that technology advanced enough is indistinguishable from magic, right? And unfortunately, when you're dealing with deep physics or deep chemistry, sometimes that's the case, right? So how do we show them that something actually works without the whole thing working, right? So getting to that definition, understanding exactly where is that point of misunderstanding, the knowledge gap that you've invented or that we've invented that doesn't exist in the public domain, that is hard to define sometimes, and you find yourself circling around that point for months, right? Until that you can define where's that piece is. Unlike software, which I've done in the past, which is wonderful, right? Allows you to iterate, make mistakes, and nothing happens. If you want to prove something in hardware, it's going to take a minute. If you want to prove something in a membrane, it's going to take a minute to demonstrate, and you can find yourself on the wrong path really quickly, right? So I think that spending time to identify the problem, the fact that people came to you with a problem defined, is wonderful. In our particular case, I heard the word fantastic multiple times, and they didn't mean it in the way that you think. They meant this is fantasy, right? That cannot work. So we needed to find ways to demonstrate things working without giving away everything, right? Because they're still retaining IP. And that is a fine balance, right? It's never an easy answer. So you need both the patience, the capital, and the inquisitive skill to tease out what is actually required to demonstrate.
Is it sometimes a matter of trying to get to the right person inside of an organization that can start to understand, or?
I think, right? It's always the right person, because you can have a champion that can't explain it inside the organization, and then you can lose the organization. So.
And I think I hear a lot, that is actually a common theme, right? Like, you just have to find a champion inside of these organizations, and then the question is, well, how do I do that? And that's certainly what we're trying to do. And it's still challenging for us, in fact, because even we have all of these corporate partners, but everyone will come and say, hey, can I talk to somebody at Shell or Microsoft, for example? It's like, well, this is the person who's our contact. Let's see if we can find the right person for what you're doing. And, it does take a bit longer, but, a lot of times we're successful, sometimes we're not. So that's another bit where I think maybe doing some of the upfront, like, how do we help your organization help yourself? Like, Third Derivative would love to come in and sort of help herd the cats and help get the word out. Like, there are companies doing this work, but it takes a long time to even get buy-in for what we're doing inside of these organizations. So you can't just show up with a bunch of startups and expect people to start working with them, right? So maybe we can move on to another question here. Dom, for you, what are some good examples of how a corporation can make it easier for you to partner with them?
I mean, we're a bit like a one-to multiple. We have different technologies, so we're trying to kind of really make sure that these carbon removal technologies can fly. And I think companies can make it easier by actually kind of moving earlier than maybe others. Like, I think we're in a situation where there's a couple of technologies like biochar, like maybe enhanced rock weathering, whatnot, can be scaled. And I think where companies understand that we're still in a situation where there's some uncertainty with these technologies. We'll find out as we go. So if they say, okay, we move, it's not perfect yet, but perfection is as we go. And we provide these kind of added layers of transparency. I mean, that's why we put this tracking system in place, that we can show with data that, what has actually been reached, to then also kind of go back and see, okay, is that what has been breached? So I think when companies say, we want to move early, and they don't wait until kind of a solution is perfect to move, maybe as part of their portfolio. I think that's one thing that we see as well. Take a portfolio approach, don't put all your eggs in one basket, but start moving and know that with the systems that we put in place, you have transparency, what's actually happening. And I think to have such champions in companies, and maybe also those champions in companies that move, talk to other companies that can help moving, I think that's where a lot of potential is. Because I feel like when we are maybe just building on what you mentioned, like who are the people within companies, we tend to have a pretty open ear with sustainability experts, and they burn for the topic, they understand the topic as well, because they go pretty deep. To deploy the capital, it typically needs someone from the CFO, controller, wonderful people, but to tell them the story in a way that is accessible to them as well, that translation service, I feel the more sustainability people can help us do that, the more we train ourselves to talk in a lingo that is clear to people deploying the capital. I think that's where a lot of potential is, and that's, I think, where a lot of also corporate partners really have been helpful. The ones that moved further, help them spread that word and how they have moved earlier than maybe others.
That's great advice, Dom. Thank you. Brooks, what about you? Actually, you can answer either of the questions I've already posed. Do you have a preference?
I mean, I think they're somewhat related, because even the way they can help us sometimes is going back to the first thing of just having kind of clear, transparent organizational structure and who you're speaking to, and especially with climate tech, it's sometimes it can get so nuanced, and we end up getting introduced to the technical specialists who just kind of have expectations that like can't be met from an early stage climate startup, and so they want everything to be perfect from the beginning. which just isn't going to happen. And so they're kind of out of sync with what their business development partners in their corporation are of at least getting the conversation started. And so sometimes when you get introduced to the wrong person from the beginning, that can end the conversation before it even kind of got started because they don't really understand where you're working from. And then, kind of additionally to piggyback on what Dom was saying earlier about, having that perfect product, when it comes to batteries, all these companies have different specifications and physical properties, electrochemical performance that they're looking for. And a lot of them are pretty closed-lipped about what that is. And so, as we're working with them to try and, build out, our cathode or our product to fit what they're looking for, sometimes it can be really hard to get out of them, like what are your specifications? And so having kind of a clear defined path of what they're looking for gives us that time and ability to kind of develop that to reach what their goals are.
Have you found any good strategies for kind of breaking through why they're so tight-lipped about their specifications? I mean, is there a good way to pull that information out?
Yeah, I guess a lot of it's even just kind of like breaking it down from, our goals are to meet their needs. And, obviously these companies are going to have, I really feel the reason why they're tight-lipped about it is they don't want to like come out with one company saying our energy density is this, and then the other company is, well, ours is this. And then that creates that like competition, in between them that they don't want to get out to consumers about why their cars have better range than others or such. And so if we can really kind of break it down to them of like our purpose to make sure that we can send the materials that they find, equivalent as, because it takes different processes to get there, I think sometimes that helps them open up a little bit.
Great. So yeah, maybe let's move on to another question. What are some lessons that you've learned in negotiating pilots or deals? I guess maybe, Udi, I can start with you here if you don't mind. And I would take too, if anything that has sort of gone sideways, like I want to start to kind of unearth these things, and maybe it hasn't with you. I'm not saying that you've had some disasters, but I think it's helpful when we learn from failure, right? So if there's anything too that you can share in that case, definitely love to hear it.
Well, it's not necessarily failure, but a temporary lack of success, I would say. And because I'm expecting in any negotiation for everything to blow up at least 3 times. And if it didn't at least once, something is fundamentally wrong because the expectations are just not met, right? Or the expectations are met perfectly, which means they were wrong from the get-go. So it's going to be interesting at the very least, right? So if anything, just make sure that you have bottled water, to take deep breaths and take a minute because otherwise you're not going to meet those expectations, as you said, right? Somebody's going to come from left field with such a demand that wasn't there from the beginning, and all of a sudden everything hinges on that. And you have to understand where it's coming from and how can that be mitigated. Is that the next step, right? Is that truly a thing? Is that something that we've missed, right? And I've been in all of those situations, right? So.
Anything you'd add to that, Christine?
I think that's a good way of putting it. I think the other thing that's really important is understanding what really belongs in critical terms and what's an appendix. I think when you're innovating and doing things, setting a really hard goal on what you expect versus your lab, you're never going to hit that target. So understanding what first of all, what the actual pain point or measurement needs to be. For instance, for membranes, we work in something called GPU and selectivity, which is great. And if you put that in the contract, then the only thing the finance people are going to look at to release money is what GPU and selectivity you got. But really, maybe the answer is you want dollars per ton of carbon when you do the simulation. And that's more helpful. So really thinking about upfront for someone who's based in technology, take yourself out of the technology mindset, ask your attorneys what a better option is so that you're hitting your goals and you're not blocking yourself on something that really could have been an appendix, nice to have, and not essential.
Got it. Yeah, that is great advice. Dom, anything you have there? Any experiences that have you found particularly helpful or not helpful when negotiating?
I shared it, like every negotiation a bit different, and like I think it starts a bit with framing. I feel like when you basically what we're enabling these corporate partners to do is to move earlier in a space that is not shaped yet. So that comes with certain insecurity, and it's inherent in what they're doing. And you're only going to make that impact if you take that leap of faith. So that's fine. Like get into that space. And then I think just like, okay, so what's the critical risk that we really need to mitigate? And where can we say, let's go on that journey together, and we make sure that you have the data, and we're going to communicate openly. But I think just frame it from the start that like if you want something new, accept that there's on some parts there is no clear answers. Obviously, we're doing our best in every way, like that, with the tracking tools, everything that we do. And I think we're all kind of, I can't claim I'm a scientist, but I want to do. But we're as a company, we're trying to be scientific about it, right? That you kind of trace it, like you can instill that trust. But like I think it's a lot about how you frame the conversation, and then how this conversation is taken internally to the ones that then probably hold the budget if that's not the same person. But yeah, it can be messy, but it's in parts of the fun, I guess.
Very fun, yes, lots of fun. Yeah, Brooks, anything from you? Any advice or tips for anyone in the room who's working with startups? How can they make it easier?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we've had a lot of the same issues that everyone else has had up here too. And it's just making sure to have a little bit of flexibility. And one of the issues kind of with the startup versus the corporate world is the corporates, there's a lot of more bureaucracy that goes through it. They have to get approvals from all these different channels, and where startups are able to move a lot quicker. We're a lot more nimble and agile in doing that, and so sometimes the just the timing of how everything works, and making sure that we can have that flexibility to work with each other, and just understand that sometimes it's going to take some time to work your way through the process.
Got it. Yes. Let's see. Next, I think Christine, I'd love for you to maybe have a shot at this question here. What else is needed really when you're talking about doing these big projects, big programs, as far as partnerships and resources to catapult some of these projects forward?
Sure, and I think that's particularly a question for the carbon capture and utilization space for a few reasons. One, this is really undefined, right? There's no price for carbon. Previously worked in polyolefins. Everybody knows what the price for polypropylene is going to be. They know where to put it. There is a market for it. That's really exciting. For carbon, that's not true at all. And so understanding that, okay, we're part of the value chain, but somebody has to own the emission site. Somebody has to either be the utilization or sequestration partner. And if there's an idea of who that is up front, or whether or not that needs to be proved with these pilots up front, is really important. And then I think the other thing is allowing everyone to play to their strengths So for instance, for us, we're really good at membranes. Heat integration is not something that we do on a daily basis. So if we're working with a large oil and gas major who has an engineering team who does this on a day-to-day basis, leaning into their strengths and being able to access some of their resources, be it the engineering team, be it someone who can help on finance with the business model, is really useful. So I think, one, understanding the full end-to-end solution, and then also everybody's strengths and what resources you can pull on to make sure that it's a win together. Because at the end of the day, this whole carbon capture or decarbonization in general won't be a win unless we all pull together. So I'm seeing this year, I'm really excited for silver buckshot, not a silver bullet, that everyone is looking like there's more than one technology that's going to solve this. And so let's look at how we put those all together.
Excellent. Anybody else want to respond to that, or we can also take some questions from the audience?
I think I just totally agree on that collaboration point. If we're just talking about sustainability and decarbonization, it's one of those things that there is no one answer. It's not wind, it's not solar, it's not batteries, it's not carbon capture. It's really about bringing all those together, and just knowing that it's the saying that like rising tides float all boats. Like we're all in this together, and so making sure that people are open to collaboration and communication so that we all can achieve these decarbonization goals we're looking for.
I would add to that we need to come into those conversations as well as understand that on the people coming in from their end, that everybody has some sort of a bias. Everybody was burned somewhere. Everybody was, they tried to take a leap of faith somewhere, and then it didn't go the way that they wanted to. And sometimes it comes out at you, and you just showed up with something that actually does work, right? You're just dealing with that little bit of headwind at that time. So I think that focusing on the corporate strategic objectives and coming from those down to the technical, I think are sometimes more important, because they allow you to prioritize, triage, and act on the things that actually matter to the organization, even if you don't have the specific, answer on, on the detail that they think at the time. Right?
Yeah, I would also say I want to just sort of applaud the work that you all do, because I think you have acknowledged that the people in these roles inside of these large organizations have it's a very challenging position to be in, right? And as much as you can do to arm them with the right information, but also inspire them in a lot of ways, right? I think you're right about like the burnout that exists. You can certainly get very frustrated trying to navigate a lot of the internal procedures and things when you're trying to do something new. And we certainly recognize that with a lot of our partners. There are the people who are like, no, I know that I've learned I have to do it this way. I have to involve fewer people where I can, and I just have to I know the people in my organization that are friendly to this process, the friendly procurement person and the friendly attorney. These are the things that our champions learn over time, and I think conversations like these also help kind of pull out some more ideas for them to play with as well. Are there questions from the audience? I think we are. If I'm trying to keep us on time. Is Chris here? Oh, Chris is here. I see you. Sorry, it was the light. You want to come on stage and just, our fifth panelist. Oh, there's a microphone. Yeah, you want to just say hi in the last kind of few minutes of our panel?
Yeah, hi, Chris Brandon, co-founder of VH Group, based in Switzerland. We've been working on our hydrogen fuel cell technology since 2017. My business partner has been in this field for 20+ years. I used to run a hedge fund, and then I thought doing fuel cells was going to be more fun. Certainly more difficult. We've been deploying them since 2020 on light commercial vehicles, marine projects, large stationary, and increasingly we're going on larger and larger powers. So it's the heaviest duty mobility, things like mining trucks, ferries, tugs, and then a lot of big stationary. So wherever you see a big diesel engine, that's what we're trying to replace.
Awesome. And I don't know if we can look for a time check. Do we need to wrap at 40?
I think we've got one here.
Yeah,
That one is a bit running late, I think. Okay. All right. Well, yeah, I guess Chris, if there's any, we covered a few questions here. Maybe I can throw the first one at you. What does a pilot look like with you, and kind of what are some of the hurdles that you, or kind of best case scenarios that you found?
So hurdles and best case scenario combined. So we were fortunate to work with Snam. Snam are Italy's, in fact, Europe's largest gas grid operator, who had, are trying to decarbonize very aggressively and looking at all the various options of biogas and hydrogen and this and that. But it's a discovery process for them as much as it was for us. So it literally probably took us about 6 months working very closely together to see what sort of use cases would fit their decarbonization targets. And it was, availability of hydrogen, how expensive it is, safety issues, integration with other things, regulation, etc. We started work with them, I think, last April. We finished the feasibility study. It took us 6 to 8 months. And then, we found the sort of beachhead approach for them, which was on off-grid applications, but off-grid can actually be within towns where you basically, on all their big construction sites where they need like a megawatt of power, now no longer they can just drag in a big diesel generator. So now we've signed an MOU with them and are looking at our first sort of large deployments as sort of a step to the next thing.
Great. Well, I think in our last couple of minutes here, any final thoughts? It's, I think I really appreciate the time that we've all spent here today. I know this is a conversation that will continue, and I feel like is urgent and important. So if anyone has any thoughts you'd like to discuss after, please find us. We're open to any and all suggestions and really want to keep this conversation going. Any parting thoughts, or are we good? Any last minute? Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you to everyone on the panel today, and thank you for all attending. And I hope it was helpful, and I will pass it over to you.